Hello and welcome to COS Today, as we bring you Roundtable. The Roundtable segment is presented here every fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. We'll be focusing on education and discussion of the topics and challenges we all face as we use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Join us now as we bring you COS Today's Roundtable with our MC, John Ackerman.
All right.
I'm sorry about that.
We're here, aren't we? Welcome to Convention of States Today. This is episode number 301, and this is the June Roundtable. I'm your host, John Ackerman. And I want to go back to Marengo Mike. He has an important reminder that we want to hear. Marengo?
Marengo Mike here, asking you to hit that like, subscribe, and especially that notification bell so you'll be reminded every time we go live. We really do appreciate your support. Now, back to our program.
Okay, thanks, Marengo.
I don't know. That one, that thing just never seems to work right, Ken. I don't know what it is.
I'm going to ask Marengo to come live with me for a while, Dale. He's not doing so well at your house.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, oh, well, let's move on.
Okay, we have a big topic for tonight, but before we get to it, we just really have to talk about the big news over the weekend. 48 hours ago, during this very hour, the United States military was dropping bombs on nuclear sites in Iran. And we want to spend a few minutes right at the top of the broadcast, giving some comments and insights and feelings about that. And I just want to go around the table here, even though it doesn't look round. We're going to make it a round table. I want to start off with Dale, our normal COS Today host. He hosts it all but the fourth Monday when I take over as roundtable host. Dale Parrish, what do you have to say about the bombing of Iran?
Well, John, I truly believe that the world is safer today than it was 48 hours ago. And it's just amazing to me the different reactions that have been coming through from around the world, and especially from within our country. Some of our own people, and some of the reactions that we've gotten, negative reactions, I should say. So I don't know, and I think we're gonna continue to see more and more varied reactions. I just want to show everybody, this is our local newspaper. I think it's the only remaining local newspaper that we have now here in our area, and it's liberal. And the headline says, "Iran lashes out at U.S. over airstrike." Okay. And I read the article, and one little piece here that they quote, the United Nations Security Council says that the U.S. has decided to destroy diplomacy. Isn't that something? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's the kind of stuff that I see going out there a lot. There's also another one in here that Iran says that that the United States has given up on negotiations. When we almost begged them to come to the table and negotiate.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't do it. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. but I do firmly believe that there needs to be a regime change, but it needs to come from within Iran.
Yes.
We're not good at that. Somebody said we're 0 for 5. I think that's what I heard. And we can't do that. It's going to have to come from within Iran now. And if there's any way we can help them, we should. But it needs to happen, but it needs to come from within Iran. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Dale. The thought occurs to me that if President Joe Biden had done the same strike, your local newspaper would have a completely different story.
Yes, it would. Yes, it would. There's no doubt about it.
They would be praising him to the highest. Okay, Ken, what's your insight on the bombing of Iran?
Well, I think I'm going to get started by piggybacking a little bit off of what Dale said about our government. I find it interesting that that our this whole mission was pulled off in complete silence.
Yeah.
Completely blind. And you know what? There were no leaks. And I wonder why that is. According to the Brigadier General, Blaine Holt, he said that approximately 1,000 people would have to have knowledge of this. 1,000 people. Based on all the support and the planes and the pilots and everything going on with this, about 1,000 people would have to have knowledge of this. And you know who was excluded from that? Congress. So it says a lot to me about our Congress and kind of piggybacks a little bit off of what Dale was saying, our government.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
The conversations we're getting. And I guess the other thing that I really find interesting about this, the Brigadier General also mentioned that we learned a lot. We learned a lot with this strike. We gathered a lot of intel. We learned a lot about the Chinese and Russian air defense systems. They have an S-300 and S-400 air defense missiles, and nobody detected anything. And that was on top of sending in these screaming planes to kind of make sure that they shot down anything that might come at them or might show up as a defense. And
yeah,
it was completely silent. So we learned a lot about the Russians and the Chinese, and I think that's got to send a little bit of a message to the Chinese and the Russians that's what hey, we totally did this completely blinding them. They didn't know anything that was coming. So I thought that was kind of interesting that the surprise and stealth matter that we did this was just really, to me, impressive, along with some of the things that he said that I don't have time to get into. I want to leave some other comments for other guys, but yeah. He mentioned at one point the amount of fueling that had to take place for these bombers, and one of the guys who I heard talk about this said one fueling alone takes about 45 minutes. That means they have to be connected for 45 minutes while they fly. No communication, no nothing happening. It's just flying and fueling. To think about the amount of bombers and the amount of fueling that had to take place for that, and no slip-ups. I mean, I think the parade that happened on the 250th parade, I wish we were able to highlight some of that, because I think we showed the preparedness of our military. It was just, I think it was just an awesome display of technology and a well-planned mission.
It was amazing. Okay, I'm going to move around in a clockwise fashion. I'll skip myself for the moment, see if these other three guys leave anything for me to say. So I'm going to go right to Gary Harbaugh. Gary, what do you have to say about it?
Well, John, from time to time throughout history, there have been some very evil people. And have come to real power. And what's very rare is for a person with the ability and the courage to stop them before they implement their evil plans and destructive plans. And I feel like, Donald Trump is a guy who, throughout his whole life, he's demonstrated a gifting from God of really strategic thinking, the ability to think for himself, do things that other people, if he had asked for advice on many things he's done in his life, I'm sure experts would have said, no, don't do that. Trump keeps his own counsel, and he recognized that there is tremendous evil in the leadership of Iran, and it had to be stopped. And he was a guy that had the courage, and the United States military had the ability, and he did what nobody else could do. And truthfully, what nobody else, probably many other people, would not have done, because they wouldn't have the courage to go against the advice of experts and, this State Department career bureaucrats who want to talk and not take action. So this is a rare thing that's happened.
Yes, it sure is. Okay, now I want to move to the new kid on the block, or the new kid on this block. Ken Whaley is in the state of Idaho, and he's way up north, within 2 or 3 stone throws of Canada. And
maybe 4, but close enough.
Okay, Ken is a district captain and a state content provider in Idaho. So Ken, what's your insight? One poignant thought about the bombing of Iran.
Well, for me, the biggest thing that I took out of it, obviously it was a phenomenal success, the mission, as Ken touched on, the refueling, all the thousands of different things that went in to make this work, let alone the secrecy. But what kind of got under my skin more than anything else was the response from the left, the Democrats, however you want to put it, about how unconstitutional it was. And since a lot of my writing has to do with the foundations, the Constitution, founding fathers, etc., that's what really stuck with me, and just got under my skin. Screaming bloody murder that it wasn't constitutional. We're going to impeach. Do this. And I have to say, it was a bit of fresh air today when John Fetterman got on. I believe it was actually Fox News. I just saw a bit of it online, and basically said, no, it was perfectly constitutional. He had every legal right to do it, and he was so very happy that he had done it. I had my real doubts about that man when he was first elected. Yeah, considering everything he had been through, where he'd come from, but I have to say, he's a breath of fresh air from that side at this point. So I think personally, there's going to be no real kickback. That's going to quiet down real fast, and the mission will continue to get things under control. Let's face it, Iran could not have a nuclear weapon. The whole world would be on fire in very short order. So. Yep. That's my take on that at this point.
Thank you, Ken. And let's go around to Brett. What do you think?
100%. I want to give a quick little weather report. We're talking about all the hot weather here with the advent of summer, the arrival of summer here in the United States. And I did read where the Fordo nuclear facility had a record high temperature of 1,200 degrees actually on Saturday. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So we think we have it bad, but. No, I think great comments, and I think the thing that kind of strikes me, without, I agree with everything everyone said, but we can't really look at this through the eyes of the West, because fundamentalist Islam, their prime directive is to convert every single person on the planet Earth to Islam, or murder them. Mm-hmm. So when they say death to Israel, they say death to America. I think we need to take them at their word. That is what their religion preaches. And this is just think about having that type of theology, that worldview, having a nuclear weapon, and having multiple nuclear weapons. It is seriously is an existential threat for the whole entire globe. But this isn't going to end. This is a 6,000-year-old dispute of whether the descendants of Isaac, which are the Jews, or the descendants of Ishmael, which are the Muslims, are the chosen receivers of the Abrahamic covenant. Mm-hmm. And simply described, this is the offer of God's protection and land to the descendants of Abraham. And briefly, Abraham and his wife Sarah were told they could not have children. God had promised Abraham lots of offspring. So Abraham had fathered a child, Ishmael, with one of Sarah's servants named Hagar.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, later after that happened, Sarah and Abraham did have a child, which was Isaac. So this is where this dispute comes of exactly who has the protection of God and who is the chosen people. And I think just a couple other quick things. I think that there's the War Powers Act. Maybe we can do this on a roundtable these days or a COS Live. My opinion is unconstitutional. And no matter how many times that Thomas Massey or Rand Paul or others shout about it. But what really concerns me and is going to keep me up awake at night is not the boots having U.S. boots on the ground. It's having Iranian boots on the ground here in the United States. Mm-hmm. And we've had open borders for the last 4 years. And it's documented that Joe Biden allowed, I think Tom Homan said, 1,272 Iranian foreign nationals into the United States. Add to that the 2 million plus gotaways. Add to that the 15 million additional illegal aliens that a lot of them of male military age. I'm really concerned with sleeper cells and attacks here on our homeland from some of these sleeper cells that might be activated.
Yeah, that's a very real possibility. So thank you, Brett.
You're welcome.
I guess I'll wrap this up by throwing in my 2 cents worth. I saw on the news at 6:00 that just a little over an hour ago that President Trump posted on Truth Social that Iran and Israel have agreed to a ceasefire, which is to commence in about 6 hours. That would mean midnight Eastern time in the United States, which translates to around sunrise over there in the Middle East. And we will see if that happens, if they really do lay down their arms and if peace is in the offing. But if that's what this bombing of Iran has led to, it's a good thing. And so it's on everybody. It's in the front of everybody's mind. And if you've had any cable news channel on at all, or if you've read a newspaper in the last 2 days, it's the number one story probably in the whole world. And we didn't want to start the June roundtable without at least paying attention to that. So we got it all in about 18 minutes. How's that, Dale?
Yeah, good. John, had they said how long the ceasefire is supposed to last, or have they put any time limit on it?
Supposed to be permanent. Supposed to be he called it the end of the war. We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
We will see what happens. Let's move on to the big topic that we prepared for. This was all just off the cuff here, this first 18 minutes. But what we prepared for was a conversation of part 2 on how Trump is restoring common sense. And here's where that came from. In his second inaugural address on January 20th, just about 5 months ago, President Trump said, and I quote, "Today I will sign a series of historic executive orders. With these actions, we will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense," close quote. Now, last month, we talked about 5 of the 10 executive orders that he spoke of in the inaugural address. And tonight we're going to take up the other 5. And the first one we're going to look at tonight, Dale Parrish is going to talk to us about how the president is restoring common sense regarding the Green New Deal.
All right. Thanks, John. Well, I put together a little PowerPoint here, and let me bring it up here, and let's hope that I can make this work for us tonight. All right. My record's not too good so far this evening, so who knows how this is going to happen. But anyway, Trump versus the Green New Deal. So like John said in his inaugural address, his promise was he pledged to restore common sense to 10 key areas of the government. And the environment and energy policy was central to this. Okay, so he, of course, vowed to dismantle the radical left climate agendas like the Green New Deal. Now, just for everyone's information, we are planning on featuring this as the Green New Deal as a major topic in an upcoming COS today. I'm looking at actually Ken Billy Norp, state director in Idaho, has committed to doing this. So he's going to be talking about this a great more than what we're talking about it tonight. But that should be coming up probably in July and on COS today. So what is the Green New Deal? Well, it's a progressive policy to fight climate change and zero emissions, government mandates, massive spending on renewable energy and jobs. I'm sure you've all seen the windmills in your area. If you haven't, we got plenty of them here in Indiana, and you cross over into Ohio. Actually, I see more of the windmills over in Ohio than I do here in Indiana. But that was all part of the Green New Deal. So why does Trump oppose it? Well, he thinks it's extreme government overreach, and and we would probably agree with that. Kills American energy and jobs, and sees it as part of a socialist economic transformation. So those are the key factors that Trump was thinking of, and what actions he wants to against it. He withdrew us from the Paris Climate Accord, expanded gas, oil, coal development, rolled back Obama era EPA regulations. So he's done everything he could to quell this movement. So as far as Trump is concerned, his vision is that we have energy independence. And if you recall, we had that at one time, the last time Trump was in office. Energy independence, drill baby drill approach to unleash fossil fuels, and believe me, right now, with the situation with Iran and oil production, the drill baby drill, I hear that being mentioned a great deal as far as increasing our oil production. So, and he believes in, of course, a balanced approach to the environment and the economy, and kind of the all above approach to energy. So if you think back on what Biden's impact was on the Green New Deal, of course, he rejoined the Paris Accord and pushed green subsidies. Everybody, we all saw this, raised gas and energy prices through regulation, and of course faced a great deal of backlash. You remember the truckers and so forth that protested on Biden's actions. So the Trump agenda is to immediately end Biden's Green New Deal programs, restore fossil fuel dominance, and cut subsidies and mandates favoring green tech. So in conclusion, Trump frames the Green New Deal as a threat to freedom, vows to restore energy sanity and economic realism, promises common sense over climate extreme. So we'll see what happens, but I think it's clear, that he is doing his best to restore common sense when it comes to the Green New Deal.
Yes, indeed. Thanks much, Dale, and thanks for giving us something to look at on the screen too while you were talking. Yeah, we could follow it, and we could check to see if you were actually talking about the stuff that you planned to talk about. Good job. Thanks. Good job, my friend. Good job. Okay, we're going to go to the second point, and Ken Whaley from Idaho is going to talk to us about how Trump is restoring common sense regarding free speech. Ken?
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, assuming my math was correct, it's been 154 days as of today since Trump was sworn in for the second time as 47th president. And whether you love him or hate him, there's no denying he's moved fast on all the topics that will be covered here today. But of course, I'm specifically dealing with restoration of freedom of speech. And let's be honest, what he's doing is what the majority of Americans would call common sense. I mean, it just really is. So, but during the Biden administration, headlines about misinformation dominated things: COVID vaccines, election interference, of course, the Hunter Biden laptop. But what did those headlines really mean? Really, what they meant was that federal bureaucrats and unelected operatives were deciding what we could see, what we could share, or what we could say. And to my way of thinking, that's just not America. That's something else entirely, something that I feel is literally on the verge of being evil. But of course, through lawsuits, whistleblowers, and the Twitter files, they proved all that out. So government agencies weren't just cozying up the tech companies, they were directly coordinating with them, flagging posts, recommending takedowns, pushing narratives. Suddenly it wasn't just content moderation, it was true government-generated censorship, plain and simple. Then, of course, when Trump took office in January and then on day one signed Executive Order 14149, it said, in essence, enough, stop. He told every federal agency, you're done manipulating speech. No more secret emails to Facebook, no more censorship tips to Twitter, just common sense. The government has no business playing referee in our conversations. But of course, he didn't stop there. A few weeks later, he tackled the legacy media beast. I have experience in legacy media, and I know for a fact that they have been lying for years to us. But of course, you know the ones: NBC, CBS, ABC, the usual suspects who spent years preaching with one voice, one slant, one agenda. They're always on the same page. Yeah. So Trump revived, I found this out, I wasn't so sure of this. Trump revived what are called the news distortion rules through the FCC. Basically, shall we call it a dusty and forgotten policy that originally come about during the Cold War. So I wanted to explain this one real quick. The FCC's news distortion rule was implemented in 1949 as part of its broader fairness doctrine that made clear that broadcast licensees had a duty to present the news honestly, without staging, without slanting or falsification. So it wasn't really partisan. It was just rooted in the belief that a free people can't govern, without getting truthful information. Let's face it, I think we all know that the whole Hunter laptop issue, had it gone out like it should have, they were talking a multi-point degree of difference in how many people voted for Biden versus not. Yeah. But that's it. So anyway, so it makes sense. So if you're using public airways, the ones owned by we the people, then you better be honest with the folks who are footing the bill, as we always are. So now that doesn't necessarily mean now that the government's deciding what's true. It just means that the media doesn't get to masquerade behind their opinion and as a fact without consequence. Now that's not regulation. That's just basic honesty. And again, common sense. But under Biden, those standards had vanished. It was all about policing the internet, while TV anchors got pretty much a free pass to blatantly lie to us. Well, Trump flipped that script on its head. He didn't punish speech. He just demanded transparency and honesty. So the next step he took actually was on May 1st of this year. He signed another executive order, 14290, slashed every dime of taxpayer funding to NPR and PBS, basically zeroed them right out. Just gone. His argument, of course, was that those two broadcast units had become propaganda machines for the left, and public money shouldn't fund political messaging. So like it or not, you can't say it's illogical, because to me it was bold and it was fair. And once again, just common sense. So, because I always think about it, should our taxes really be used to pay for broadcasters who despise our deeply held values? I mean, broadcasters who label you a threat for wanting to secure the borders, hold fair elections, or for our faith in God. Trump obviously didn't think so. Instead of launching a task force, normal government approach, he picked up the pen and signed it right away. So this wasn't really a policy shift. It was just a philosophical reset in the government's approach. Biden's team acted like it was their job to curate the truth. Trump, yeah, he believes more in the founders' idea of the truth. Let's debate it. Let's test it. Let's speak freely, and not have it be something that's handed down from the government pulpit. So again, no filters, no middleman, just we as Americans deciding for ourselves. To me, that's freedom. And yeah, it can sometimes be messy, but it's also real. Many people, as I was researching this topic, called it pretty reckless. To me, I call it refreshing. And long overdue, because when tech companies are colluding with federal agencies, the news is indistinguishable from the DNC press releases, and that means something's broken. So Trump didn't catch it, smashed it all to pieces. For once, someone brought a little bit of good old common sense to the swamp, a place that's been basically allergic to that for quite some time. So basically, Trump has made one thing unmistakably clear. Free speech is non-negotiable. He's drawn hard lines, no more nudges, no more misinformation, no more taxpayer-funded echo chambers. Instead, he's returned the microphone to we the people exactly where it belongs. Excuse me. Something about free speech as a whole. It's usually loud, usually chaotic. You can't yell fire in a crowded room, but other than that, anybody's free to say whatever they want to say, and the lies get pushed aside and the truth tends to come to the top. And really, that's what Trump has given us again, is the ability to debate, discuss, and work these things through. So whatever you want to say about Trump as a person or even as a president, I think he's doing what any thinking person would call being very obvious and basic and fair. He's doing what used to be taught in grade school: let people speak, let the truth rise, let ideas compete. In other words, he's doing what works, and he used common sense to do it. So imagine that. Back to common sense in government, at least in that part.
Yep. Thanks, Ken. And that's what this episode of COS Today is all about: common sense, restoring common sense to the federal government. We're going to take a little break right now and see a video on what's happening nationally in Convention of States. This is episode number 23 of COS Now.
Episode of COS Now. The Ohio Senate hears from the public on COS, a new endorsement for the movement, and so much more. Let's dive right in on this week's episode of COS Now.
What do we want? When do we want it? Now!
On Tuesday afternoon, the Ohio Senate Committee on General Governments held its third hearing on Convention of States' application for an Article 5 convention to propose amendments limiting federal spending, power, and terms of office. COS co-founder Michael Ferris was there to provide expert testimony.
This is a state process. The reason the states were given this power is so that the federal government could not unilaterally block amendments that release federal power. The context is absolutely clear. Congress will not be able to control the process. States control the process, and it will be a safe process. And you can fearmonger about everything you want, but I would rather fearmonger about $39 trillion worth of debt than the nonsense of a runaway convention.
While no vote was taken, the Ohio team is flexing its grassroots muscle to pressure the committee to take action on our resolution. COS is pleased to announce the official endorsement of Craig Haggard, an Indiana state representative and board member of the National Rifle Association. His statement reads in part, quote, "The federal government's reckless spending and stretching of the Constitution's boundaries must be stopped. That is why I unequivocally endorse Convention of States." Meanwhile, COS President Mark Meckler appeared on the Steve Gruber Show to share his take on current events.
Is there a role for federal government and state government to play on the same field?
No, I don't think so. And by the way, the framers of the Constitution didn't believe so. We know of the famous debate between Hamilton and Jefferson about big government versus small government, but a place where they both agreed, which was that if a state can do it, and the federal government can't, and vice versa. This is strictly the province of the states. And if states want to enter into mutual support agreements, which they do all the time, if they want to say, hey, we'll help you in an emergency if you help us in an emergency, that's the way that you get broader assistance.
Mark was also a featured speaker at this year's Freedom Fest, featuring a wide range of liberty-loving Americans, many of whom had never heard about Convention of States before. Here's a clip from Mark Meckler's powerful speech.
So Colonel George Mason told us, look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you the power to do that. And he proposed Article 5, the second clause. He said, we're going to give the power to the people acting through the states to rise up. When 2/3 of the states agree that we need to gather in convention, then we can gather in convention and we can propose amendments that take power away from the federal government.
Now, it's time for the final five. Number 1. Members of the North Carolina team educated attendees at a homeschool convention, the North Carolina Home Educators Conference. They had some help from the Liberty Llama, as well as a special guest, Benjamin Franklin.
Hey guys, Vanessa Paulson here. I am at the homeschool convention, and right behind me is our amazing stand. Lots of good handouts.
Number 2, COS continues to grab headlines in local news outlets, including in Kentucky and Ohio. Number 3, while the North Carolina House has already passed the COS resolution this year, the Senate hasn't taken action. That's why North Carolina patriots are keeping the pressure on at the Capitol in Raleigh. While they were there, they sat down for an interview with Representative Brian Echevarria.
What do you believe is the best way for the people of our state to reclaim power from the federal government?
Oh, well, that's the convention. We have to get it. And I'm no expert on the subject of the convention. I understand the whole concept. And because I understand the concept, I understand the need. I mean, we have a lot that has to change. We need term limits. We need to demand constitutionally a balanced budget. We need our elected representatives to be employed by the people they represent. So instead of them being an employee in DC, they need to be an employee here.
Number 4, the Michigan team recently recognized volunteers John Phillips and Nancy Chambers with Patriot Pins to honor their hard work and dedication. Visit conventionofstates.com and check out our blog to learn more. And number 5, here's some of my favorite photos sent in from across the country, including Oregon, North Carolina, South Carolina, Ohio, and Mississippi. What was your favorite news item from this week? Let us know in the comments section below, and just so you know, we won't have a new episode next week due to the holiday weekend, but we hope you enjoy a happy and blessed Independence Day, and we'll see you next time on COS Now.
Well, that was pretty good. Okay. Now we're going to go to Brett Sturley from Missouri, who's going to talk about how Trump is restoring common sense through the rule of law.
Well, thank you, John. Yeah, we're just going to kind of cover 3 points here pretty quickly. First is just enforcing the rule of law, and most specifically, immigration law. And we've seen that, and we've had that on a past episode. But just to recap, there, just the closing of the southern border. We were told that we had to have comprehensive immigration reform. That our immigration system was broken, and President Trump summed it up great in the State of the Union address. He said, it turns out we didn't need new laws. We just need a new president. You just have to have somebody that is somebody in the Oval Office that's determined to enforce the law that Congress has passed. And what we have seen in the last, 154 days, I think Ken said, has been breathtaking. You look, there has been a 93% decrease in illegal immigration. That's a decrease of 93% of people approaching the southern border to get into our country. That's phenomenal. And just to put numbers to that, in illegal border encounters in May of 2004, there were 117,905 illegal border encounters in May last year. May this year, 8,725. That's just astounding. And even more so, a lot of those illegal immigrants that would come to the border, the Customs Border Patrol was basically just made under the Biden administration just be just to be a travel agency. They were personnel processing, and they would tell the illegal immigrants, hey, you need to show up for your administrative law hearing on August 12th of 2030, and be sure you come back, save the date. But they would never ever show back up, so they would just be released into the country. May of 2024, there were 62,000 illegal immigrants that were encountered at the border and not processed for asylum claims or anything, but just basically take their name and document that they're here, and then just release them into the country, release them in the United States. 62,000 just in 1 month in May of 2024. Well, guess how many there were in May of 2025? Zero.
Zip.
Not a single one. So this does several things. It restores the value of citizenship, that it makes citizenship actually mean something, that you just can't just come here and just be led into our country just willy-nilly without having any kind of pledge of allegiance to our way of life, learning how to function in our society or anything like that. It also decreases the burden on taxpayers, that we're not paying to support those illegal immigrants that are here in the country illegally. And then probably the most important thing is, this is I think we all think this is pretty important. He's actually upholding his oath of office. This is what President Trump took an oath to do. And so he's actually upholding that. So that seems pretty common sense to me. Another common sense thing is protecting girls' sports. And this is defending a restoration of Title IX. And these are a couple things, a couple items that were in the executive order restoring Title IX. These are definitions. Sex shall refer to an individual's immutable biological classification as either a male or female. Sex is not a synonym for and does not include the concept of gender identity. Pretty straightforward. Women or woman and girls or girl shall mean adult and juvenile human females, respectively.
Nice.
Just real radical. How about men or man and boys or boy shall mean adult and juvenile human males, respectively. Pretty straightforward. They also said that federal funds shall not be used to promote gender ideology. Each agency shall assess and grant conditions and grantee preferences and ensure grant funds do not promote gender ideology. Pretty straightforward. And then finally, enforcing the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And this is where the battle has been between the Trump administration and the rule of law against college universities. And so what President Trump did here is he removed federal funding from universities discriminating on their admission policies based upon race. Mm-hmm. And specifically, this has happened. They've been targeted against Harvard, against Columbia, Northwestern, Portland State, and Cal Berkeley. And all five of those universities have federal lawsuits pending against them for civil rights discrimination in violation of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. What President Trump did in his executive order is that he terminated diversity, equity, and inclusion. I call it division, inequality, and can't remember what the I is right now. So in discrimination in the federal workforce and in federal contracting and spending. Federal hiring, promotions, and performance reviews will award individual initiative, skills, performance, and hard work, and not under any circumstances DEI-related factors, goals, policies, mandates, or requirements. And my version of DEI is division, inequality, and see, I forgot the I again. There you go. I've seen your moment. So moving on, the order requires the Office of Management and Budget to streamline the federal contracting processes to enhance speed and efficiency, reduce costs, and require federal contractors and subcontractors to comply with our civil rights laws. It also directs all departments and agencies to take strong action to end private sector DEI discrimination, including civil compliance investigations. And I think that you've seen this change in this narrative because, this June is, was co-opted as Pride Month a few years ago. Yeah. I think this has been the most muted Pride Month I've ever seen. I think people are sick of this. You see companies reversing their DEI policies. Same thing on the university level, and this woke agenda. Corporations are on their own just rejecting it in favor of this common sense.
Okay, that's pretty good, Brett. Thank you. Dale Parrish.
John, I just want to point out this is the first time I've ever seen Brett not remember what he's going to say. Well, that's a first, I believe.
I had a Dale Parrish moment. I apologize.
Hey, I wanted to say one more thing. Back on the COS Now video, the Ohio representative that stated that elected officials should be employees of the state that they represent. I'd never heard that before. Have you? I think that's an interesting concept.
Brand new idea.
Yeah,
that's a new one.
I think that warrants some additional study. I think so. Just wanted to point that
around.
And I do have it. It's division, exclusion, and inequality.
There you go. There you go.
I knew the second one wasn't right.
Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. Yes. Well, it makes sense, Dale, that if you're representing the state of Indiana in the House of Representatives or in the Senate, maybe the state of Indiana ought to be the one paying your salary because you're working for those people.
Yeah.
Supposedly. Yeah. That
makes sense, I think. Yeah.
A real economic reordering. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to go to the fourth big point of tonight. And Ken Kashuba is going to talk about how Trump is restoring common sense with regard to DE&I. And Ken, if you want to talk about this QR code up here in the corner, you're free to do that too.
All right. Well, I'll start with that, being that Brett has cut down my narration quite a bit with his DEI inclusion and the wokeness that he's covered, which thank you, Brett. I mean, it takes a lot off my plate tonight. So no problem. No problem. You covered it well. That little QR code is a support code basically. And all we ask you to do is take your smartphone out right now and take a shot of that and put your name and email address. And you will show us that you are supporting our efforts here at COS Today Roundtable and our regular programming every Monday at 7:00. There's a lot of contributor segments there for people to go back. I mean, we've had contributors here for years now, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. So along with a platform to connect with other people who show their support for the program. So that's all about that QR code. And as Brett mentioned, in a lot of those areas, one of the first things, obviously, President Trump did was target wokeness in the country. He was determined for our country to become merit-based and not all this DEI stuff. So I'll skip down to a couple of things here. I'll just kind of review a few things and give you an overview of some of the things that have happened since that time. And as Brett has mentioned, universities. Now there's been, and I think this number's even grown, but the last research I did was there's been more than 30 universities that have changed how their diversity programs or offices operate across the country. And that's according to Politico, who's not a conservative rag of all, that their analysis of the 50 flagship schools nationwide have talked about how they have closed their diversity offices entirely, while another 15 schools or so have actually renamed or restructured their programs. So I think that's something we have to keep an eye on, and I'm sure President Trump will try and put the screws down a little bit more, as we've seen him do with Harvard, for instance, by restricting federal money to Harvard. Dangling that federal money is a big hammer, and that one didn't come blindly. That one he let him know up front that it was coming. So those are just some of the things on the school end of things that have changed. Also want to talk about the government. He obviously, with DOGE and the other things that have gone on, Republicans in state houses have also paved a path for the Trump administration to crush DEI programs, and have roughly 24 states have passed laws to restrict diversity statements used in hiring practices, and scrap the DEI training and prohibit the use of state funding for DEI programs, and restrict some curriculum. So I want to move into, as Brett covered some of the other stuff so well, I'm just going to focus on some of the corporations and some of their changes. And this list is way too long. I tell you, I could spend an hour going through these different corporations. So I'm going to highlight just a few that people are familiar with. IBM shifted its supplier diversity goals away from race and gender to focus on all small businesses and veteran-led companies, and stopped linking executive compensation to diversity hiring goals. That's huge, in some of the moves for a company like IBM. Let's see. I got to refer here to the list because it is long. Gannett is the United States' largest newspaper publisher, and it said it will no longer publish diversity data and removed references to diversity from its corporate website. I think that's a move in the media direction that I'd like to see. Some of the other, some of our media friends that we've talked about here get hammered a little bit more and stop promoting lies as they have. So seeing that from Gannett is a good move as well. Let me slip down here. I've got these listed. United Health Group, for instance, removed web pages dedicated to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and instead adopted language like culture of belonging. And that was first reported by a company spokesperson who told the outlet it seeks to comply with existing and emerging laws while striving to support what is best for the communities we serve. So that's United Healthcare. Let me jump to this one. I'm not sure. I'm sure most men are familiar with the name Victoria's Secret. Anybody here know about Victoria's Secret? Let's see.
Heard of it.
Well, maybe just the mention of that's going to make our shorts list pop up, but we'll see what happens with that. I want to talk about Victoria's Secret's representative who told Bloomberg that a shift for the company that made investments in DEI throughout the 2020s following a reported workplace harassment scandal, as well as controversy and boycotts over an alleged lack of body type diversity among its models. So that's one that I think that most guys are going to be keeping their eye on, see if that actually comes true. Here's one another one, State Street, which installed the famous Fearless Girl. Well, they previously expected boards in major indexes to be 30% female, and the S&P 500 companies to have at least one racial minority director. But these requirements appear to have been dropped in the company's new proxy voting guidance published on its website. Those are just to name a few. I mean, there's some from Warner Brothers, even Disney has made, and whether they actually hold true to this will be something we'll have to check on maybe in another year or two. But these are just some of the companies that have made changes since Trump decided, we're gonna stop this DEI nonsense and go back to a merit-based country. Mm-hmm. And I think we're all looking forward to that. And I think one of the things at this point that we can kind of connect up with our most recent military achievement is I don't think this would have happened with our previous military under the direction of Joe Biden.
Good point, Ken. Good point. Thank you for that discourse on DEI. Okay.
Hey, Ken, do you have any links on that Victoria's Secret thing? I mean, anything we could...
I can certainly post one. Yes, I think I can find a link to that.
If you, I'm sure there's probably been some viewers that were having interest in that. You're thinking of the viewers, of course.
Sure.
Of course. Yeah.
Nobody on this screen.
No,
Just
right.
the viewers.
Just the
Yes.
viewers. Yes, yes.
Understood. Well, Gary Harbaugh, this is the longest I've ever seen you be quiet. and you get to round third and head towards home plate. How is President Trump restoring common sense with regard to inflation?
Thanks, John. Well, Donald Trump recognizes, I think, that inflation is not increasing prices. Inflation is a reduction in the purchasing power of money. And since one of the fundamental definitions of money is that it is to be a store of value, when there is inflation, it is destroying the currency. And that's what's been going on. And the destruction of currency through inflation has destroyed countries, destroyed economies. It's just a horribly destructive force. And Donald Trump has the common sense recognition that this is a bad thing, and he wants to try to do what he can to reduce inflation. Not a tremendous amount he can do, but he's doing what he can. So if we take a starting point in June of 2024 and in January of 2025, inflation in those 2 months was running about 3% on an annual basis. And some of the months in between last June and January, it was a little bit lower, but take 3% as a benchmark. Since Trump was inaugurated near the end of January, there have been 4 monthly reports, February, March, April, and May. And in those 4 months, inflation has averaged about 2.3 to 2.4%. So you may think, well, that's a 0.7% reduction, but that's actually about a 20% reduction in the rate of inflation.
Mhm.
So it is significant.
Yeah.
Another thing is that all the experts have said, Trump tariffs are going to increase inflation. And this is what all the experts have said. And you may say, well, why has this not happened? Well, for one thing, the foreign manufacturers, primarily China, have had to reduce the prices at which they send products to us to account for the fact that tariffs are going to have to be paid. And there have been a reduction in profit margins by companies that import goods and have to pay a tariff and then sell them to the public. But it has not produced all these higher prices that were predicted by the experts, because a lot of the profit has been wrung out of that. And a lot of that profit is crushing China and the manufacturing industry in China. And that's a good thing because it's forcing manufacturing to come back to America.
Yeah.
A second thing that Trump has done is getting the free riders and the freeloaders off the public dole. There goes my clock. But anyway, so people who are on welfare, people who are getting 100-year-olds, 120-year-olds collecting Social Security payments, they use most all of that money for spending. And so when you cut off that with the help of Doge, you eliminate some of that free riding that's been going on. And I understand about 1 million illegal immigrants have self-exported. They've self-deported, gotten themselves out of the country. And so that is reducing demand. And what Trump has done, this reduces demand, tends to push prices down, and is encouraging the increase in production through deregulation.
Mm-hmm.
Deregulation, encouraging domestic manufacturing. This puts downward pressure on prices. So more domestic production, less domestic spending by the free riders tends to lower prices. The final thing that Jedi Knight Donald Trump is doing is fighting the dark Sith Lord of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, trying to get Jerome Powell to lower interest rates.
Yeah.
And lowering interest rates may not have any immediate effect on inflation, but it has an immediate effect on people who are borrowing money to buy houses, people who have to borrow money on their credit card interest, businesses that want to invest in new production. lower interest rates will benefit all of those people. And so that's the last area where really Trump is battling to get lower interest rates to help people. I don't know if it'll show up in the reports anytime soon. Inflation is a long-term effect, and it's reported every month, but it takes a long time to really push inflation down. So
yes,
that's what he's doing, trying to restore common sense by getting really sound money, which is what it amounts to.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Well, we're going to close the book on Trump's inaugural address. Last month and this month, we covered all 10 points where he said he was going to restore common sense. Don't know what we're going to talk about in the July roundtable, but we'll figure that out before that time comes around. So we're now at the end of this month's roundtable, and before we close it out, I want to give you our email address. If you have any questions about Convention of States, anything at all, send them to us by email at this address, raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. That's raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. Now, something big, bold, and great is coming to the crossroads of America, the city of Indianapolis, otherwise known as the Circle City, this September, and it's called the COS Summit. Watch this promo video for it.
Wrangle Mike here with a reminder of an event you're not going to want to miss. The Race to Freedom Summit is going to be held right here in Indianapolis, September 18th through the 20th, and it's coming quicker than you think. So, watch the video and get yourself registered for the Race to Freedom Summit here in Indianapolis. See you there.
Hey, Convention of States, this is Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith. We're so happy to have you here in Indiana. I'm a big supporter of an Article 5 convention. I love what you're doing. Keep driving that ball home, and welcome to Indianapolis.
We're checking in at the Sheridan. Come and join us. Join us for Race to Freedom. Hey, Kate Spade. Check it out. Join us in Indy. Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. Race to freedom. Hey everyone, meet Rich from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum. He's a volunteer here. Come to the museum. You're going to love it. This is a great place. Rich comes out here once a month from St. Louis, Missouri. He volunteers this time just like you're doing. Come meet Rich at the museum.
That's pretty cool.
I think Dale has lost his camera connection, so we'll go ahead and see if we can fill us back in here wherever we were. Let's see if
Okay.
it works. There we
Yeah,
go.
that's the Race to Freedom coming up in Indianapolis in less than 3 months, September 18 through 20. Now, I want to invite you to tune in next Monday, June 30th at 7 p.m. Eastern, where the COS Today is going to talk about media bias. And the week after that, July the 7th, doing a deep dive on the Green New Deal. We scratched the surface today, but the COS Today is going to do a deep dive on July the 7th. And our next Convention of States Today Roundtable will be on the fourth Monday of July. That'll be July 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and the topic will be decided. Now we want to show you COS Basics number 21, No Safeguards. John Ackerman for Convention of States, Indiana. In this episode of COS Basics, I'm continuing to bust myths. This myth is that an Article 5 convention has no safeguards. It won't protect our Constitution from rogue delegates or special interest groups. That's the myth. The fact is contrary to the myth, wouldn't you know? The fact is that significant safeguards exist to prevent corruption. They include, number one, the limited scope of an amendments convention. The scope of authority for the convention is defined by the topic, which is specified in the 34 applications that trigger the convention. Any proposals beyond that scope would simply be out of order. Number two, restrictions on commissioner authority. Convention commissioners are the agents of their state legislature and are subject to the instructions given by their state legislature. The state legislature can recall commissioners who attempt to exceed their authority, and actions taken outside the scope of a commissioner's authority would be void. If state legislatures failed to stop commissioners from acting beyond their powers, and if a majority of state delegations voted to propose an amendment that's outside the scope of the convention, and if Congress nevertheless sent that amendment to the states for ratification, the courts could declare that amendment null and void. The third safeguard is state voting requirements. It's a requirement that 38 states ratify any amendment proposed by the convention. That means only 13 states are needed to block any ill-conceived or illegitimately advocated proposal. The convention cannot change the method of ratification. Finally, the United States Supreme Court has stated that an Article 5 Amendments Convention is empowered by the United States Constitution and is subject to its rules. And so the myth that an Article 5 convention has no safeguards, busted. Here is a final message from Marengo Mike.
Marengo Mike here with a reminder that our work to raise the bar on making our federal government accountable to the people is only halfway done. We need to grow our grassroots army of citizens every day to fulfill the vision of our forefathers and keep our land free and prosperous. So, if you have never signed the petition to show your support, use that QR code and do that now. While you're there, why not kick it up a notch and volunteer for many of the positions available where your talents can make a difference? as we march into a new year. Thank you, and God bless.